Africa is not just rising, it is awakening. And we will no longer kneel before foreign empires cloaked in diplomacy. Our destiny is not to follow, it is to lead. And we will claim that destiny with pride, courage, and unity. Picture this. A majestic hall in New York City, lit with gold and blue, filled with the most powerful figures on earth. Presidents, prime ministers, kings, CEOs, and diplomats from every continent all gathered for a historic occasion. 80 years since the founding of the United Nations, born from the ruins of World War II. The room hums with ceremony, with speeches prepared and cameras ready. But no one is ready for what comes next. The UN Secretary-General, António Guterres, steps to the podium. The usual diplomatic calm gives way to something different. His voice doesn't offer comfort, it delivers conviction. He doesn't offer pleasantries, he offers a challenge. And as he speaks, a storm begins to build, not outside, but in the hearts of those listening. This is not just a speech. It is a declaration. A breaking of silence. A reckoning with history. He calls the world to account, especially the powerful, for broken promises, unjust wars, and the enduring exploitation of the global south. Then, with clarity and courage, he turns to Africa. And the world stops breathing. Africa is not the future, Africa is the now. The time of ignoring, sidelining, and exploiting this continent is over. And to the brave new leadership emerging, we see you. Then, with deliberate pause, he utters a name that shatters diplomatic protocol. Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Gasps ripple across the hall. The cameras shift. Eyes widen. Sitting quietly among the African delegates, Captain Traoré doesn't flinch. His eyes remain steady. His presence commands without speaking. This is no accident. This is the moment Africa is recognized, not as a charity case, not as a battleground, but as a sovereign force. Traoré is not your typical head of state. He is young, fearless, and unshakably Pan-African. From Burkina Faso, a land often written off as poor and unstable, he emerged with a mission. To end the era of foreign plunder and restore dignity to his people. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso has taken back control of its gold, its governance, and its future. Military bases that once housed foreign troops are being replaced by homegrown defense forces. Resources that once enriched outsiders are now feeding local development. And dreams that once seemed impossible are now national policy. Where others talk of democracy, Traoré builds participation. Where others beg for aid, he demands fairness. Where others bow to foreign pressure, he walks proudly with his people. For decades, leaders like him were dismissed as radicals, rebels, or threats. But something is changing. The continent is watching. The youth are rising. And the world is listening, some in awe, others in fear. When António Guterres says Traoré's name, he doesn't just recognize a man. He honors a movement, one that says, Africa will no longer export raw materials and import poverty. Africa will no longer be silenced in international halls. Africa will define its own narrative, build its own future, and speak in its own voice. The whole is silent, but every African heart is loud. In classrooms, parliaments, farms, and factories, the ripple is felt. This wasn't just a speech. It was a turning point. It was a moment when the world stage, built by those who once colonized, became the platform for the colonized to reclaim power. It was the moment Africa stepped into the room not as a guest, but as a co-author of humanity's future. The UN was born 80 years ago to prevent the horrors of war. But if it is to survive another 80, it must now also prevent the horrors of economic domination, political hypocrisy, and cultural erasure. And that begins by recognizing the truth. Africa doesn't need permission to rise. It only needs the world to get out of its way. Why is this moment so groundbreaking? Because António Guterres didn't just mention Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He made a declaration. Africa must be respected. Leaders like Captain Traoré represent a new era of self-determination. The UN must support their right to build independent futures, free of foreign domination. The words struck like lightning. In a room filled with seasoned diplomats and world leaders, many used to dictating the global agenda, there was silence. Shock. Recognition. Among the African delegates, a quiet ripple of pride. Traoré didn't smile. He didn't clap. He didn't have to. His presence, young, disciplined, defiant, spoke louder than any applause. This was not politics as usual. This was a turning point in global history. For centuries, Africa has carried the weight of invasion, partition, and theft. The colonial powers didn't just draw borders, they drew blood. They looted gold, diamonds, oil, and souls. And left behind broken economies, foreign currencies, and puppet governments. And even after independence, the exploitation never stopped. It simply changed forms. Trade agreements skewed to benefit the West. Loans designed to keep nations in debt. Foreign companies extracting billions, while local children die without medicine. And when African leaders stood up and said no, they were often punished. Sanctioned. Isolated. Or worse, assassinated. But Guterres' speech breaks that cycle. By naming and affirming Traoré, he is not just recognizing one man. He is validating an entire movement. A growing wave of African leaders who are refusing to accept crumbs from global powers, and demanding sovereignty over their own destinies. This isn't about Burkina Faso alone. It's about Mali, Niger, Congo, Chad, Zimbabwe. It's about every African nation that has been told to wait, to follow, to obey. And now, they're choosing to lead. To understand just how radical this moment is. We must return to the UN Charter of 1945. A sacred document born in the ashes of World War. It promises that all nations, large and small, will be treated as equals. That peace, justice, and shared progress will be the foundation of the modern world. The Charter was supposed to be a shield against tyranny, against war, against greed. And for 80 years, the United Nations has done much to uphold it. Mediating conflicts, feeding the hungry, sheltering the displaced, advancing gender equity, and supporting global development. But Guterres warns. That shield is cracking. The Charter is being ignored, selectively honored by those who preach law, but break it. Some nations violate international rules with impunity, bombing civilians, weaponizing food, undermining the very institutions they helped build. The erosion of the UN's moral authority, Guterres says, is not just a crisis, it is a catastrophe in slow motion. And still, he does not stop there. He turns the spotlight toward Africa, not to pity it, but to empower it. He names the crisis for what it is, sovereignty theft. A long, ongoing campaign of economic control and neo-colonial manipulation. He reminds the world of the truth. Africa was not underdeveloped, it was intentionally underdeveloped. Its systems sabotaged, its leaders undermined, its wealth exported. Even in the modern era, foreign multinationals still control the lifeblood of African economies. Minerals, oil, telecoms, ports, all too often in foreign hands. Those who resist are labeled dangerous, unstable, authoritarian. But now, a new generation is rising and it is unapologetic. Captain Ibrahim Traoré is not just a soldier or a head of state. He is the face of a deeper revolution. A Pan-African awakening that demands Africa's resources serve its own people first. Self-determination, Guterres says, is not a request. It is a right. And the UN must stand with nations, like Burkina Faso, that are asserting that right. That declaration echoes far beyond the walls of the General Assembly. It sends a message to every African youth, every farmer, every entrepreneur. Your liberation is not illegal. Your ambition is not dangerous. Your future does not belong to Paris, London, or Washington, it belongs to you. This speech, in its clarity, its courage, and its historical weight, may mark the beginning of a new chapter for Africa on the world stage. Not a chapter of dependency or apology, but a chapter of ownership, power, and renewal. And it forces the world to reckon with a question that can no longer be avoided. What happens when Africa stops asking for a seat at the table and starts building its own? He doesn't just call for dialogue. He calls for respect, for sovereignty, for self-determination, for Africa. He praises the resilience of a continent long denied its rightful place. This is a historic shift. For the first time in UN history, its highest-ranking official stands not with the power that be, but with those rising up to change the future. It's a public validation of Africa's revolutionaries. A recognition of their right to lead, to resist, and to rebuild on their own terms. And the response? Immediate. Electric. Unstoppable. Across the continent, the streets hum with celebration. Social media platforms like X explode with hashtags. Hashtag Africa Rising. Hashtag Sovereignty Now. Hashtag Traoré. From Dakar to Nairobi, from Bamako to Ouagadougou, the moment reverberates. Clips of Captain Ibrahim Traoré sitting poised and calm as Guterres speaks go viral. Young Africans pose proudly. This is our time. Africa is done bowing. We are no longer asking, we are becoming. Activists cheer. Artists create. Elders nod in recognition. For once, the world is not talking about Africa. Africa is speaking for itself and being heard. But not everywhere. In Western media, the silence is deafening. Global outlets, so quick to amplify conflict or crisis, suddenly go quiet. Uncomfortable with a narrative they didn't write. But in Africa, the story is alive, in markets, in classrooms, on radios, in mosques and churches. It's more than news, it's a shift in consciousness. Because this moment is not about one speech, or one leader, or even one country. It's about a continent stepping fully into its power, unapologetically. The timing couldn't be more critical. Just weeks before, the world's leaders gathered to adopt the Pact for the Future. A bold new agreement to strengthen the UN and reignite its mission. It promises action on the biggest challenges of our time. Climate change, poverty, inequality, artificial intelligence, global cooperation. But the pact is more than policies, it's a vision for a shared planet. Where governments, youth, civil society, and businesses all have a voice. Guterres sees this as an opportunity to rebuild trust. To shape a UN that is stronger, fairer, and truly global. And for Africa, the pact is more than hope. It's a call to finally break the chains of dependency and exploitation. It's a promise that African voices, once silenced, will now be central. That African solutions, long ignored, will now lead the way. By standing with Traoré, Guterres sends a clear signal. The United Nations is ready to live up to that promise. Not just in speeches, but in action. Because Africa is done being managed. It is ready to manage itself. To build economies that serve its own people. To lead on clean energy, education, and digital innovation. To be an equal player, not a pawn on the global stage. And Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He is not the beginning and not the end. But a symbol of what happens when a people find their courage again. He leads not by asking for sympathy, but by demanding dignity. He doesn't posture for applause, he acts for progress. And in doing so, he ignites a fire across the continent. From Senegal to Kenya, from Ghana to Ethiopia. Leaders and citizens alike are echoing his stance. Demanding control of their land, their labor, their future. Guterres' speech becomes the spark. But the fire has been burning for decades. A fire fed by memory. By the knowledge of what was stolen. And the belief in what can still be reclaimed. This is history in motion. The UN has always been a place of possibility. For 80 years, it has delivered aid, brokered peace, and stood for human rights. But now, the world is changing, faster, fiercer, more fragmented. And the UN must change too. Guterres calls for a new kind of institution. One that listens to youth, amplifies local communities, and partners with innovators. One that stands firm on its principles, even when it's inconvenient. And above all, one that respects Africa, not as a region in crisis, but as a partner in shaping the future. That future is already taking shape. And it's being built by those who refuse to wait for permission. The speech may be over. But the movement has just begun. Across Africa, young people are marching forward, not in protest, but in purpose. Local leaders are rethinking policies. Movements are taking root. The message is clear. Africa doesn't need saving. It needs space to rise. The UN's role is no longer to command. It is to stand beside, to invest in, and to amplify. And in doing so, it becomes not just a global body, but a force for justice. Guterres' speech was not just a moment. It was a signal to the world. Africa has arrived. It is leading. And it's not turning back. This is a new chapter. Written by Africans. Told in African voices. Fueled by African pride. The world is watching. Let them see everything. Every step forward. Every voice raised. Every dream fulfilled. Africa is not the future. Africa is the present. And the world must adjust. This is an AI-narrated news report for educational and informational purposes only. It does not imitate or misrepresent any real person. All efforts are made to comply with YouTube's content policies.